Okay, so in this section I want to talk some about the audio mixer, because the audio mixer is a very important and potentially confusing and pitfall-y kind of area of OBS Studio. So one thing I want to kind of mention, let me go back up here to my default scene. You can see the audio levels that I've got going. It's real important to kind of keep an eye on this, because when you're streaming you want to make sure that your audio levels are up near the red. You know, I'm talking on this integrated webcam right here and it's picking it up okay. But one thing you don't want to have happen is you don't want to have your audio levels, as you'll see as I adjust the level on my NDI clip. See how it's red right there? Red will clip and distort and sound bad. So you can actually, for each source, adjust the audio level down until it's something much more agreeable. So now I've got my NDI audio level adjusted down. Let me go back up here to my scene. If you notice though, when I switch scenes, the audio for the NDI source disappeared. And this is one of the slightly confusing things about OBS Studio, is that unless you duplicate mics or add them, audio sources, they don't follow. In fact, you can see that from scene to scene, you know, OBS Studio is looking for those collections of sources. And so from my default scene to my Blackmagic scene, I don't have the webcam. And so you have to add those in. And when you add them in, then you will have your audio kind of following from scene to scene. So that's something that's real important to do and to understand, is to make sure that you have to duplicate an audio source in a scene. So for, let's say that, you know, as I'm talking right now, you can see I've got my laptop mic that I've renamed. And by the way, it's a really cool thing that you can do is if I right click on a source, I can rename it. And if you get a lot of sources, you probably want to do this. So I'm just going to rename this one USB cam. And this one will be, I'm going to rename this. You have to use separate names. USB cam mic. So now if I come into my BMD scene and click on it, now you see I don't have my laptop camera's web microphone, so I'm going to click plus. I'm going to tell it audio input capture, and this time I want to add existing. So I'm going to tell it laptop mic. So now when I click OK, it's there, and so now every time I switch between BMD and scene, my default one, my microphone is there. And that's real important for audio continuity, because otherwise your microphone will disappear and you won't hear it on the stream. So just kind of have to keep an eye and make sure that your microphones, wherever they are, that you have those audio sources on there. So I'm going to add my microphone to this scene as well, add existing, laptop mic, okay. So now I've got that on here, and so every scene that I go back and forth to in this audio mixer will do that. And so again, like I said, you can reuse microphones from scene to scene, and you will have to do that just to make sure that you have the same audio. Now there are a couple of other cool things that you can do in this. In fact, if you see on my screen right here, the I also mutes a button, mutes an input, just like it does for video. So if you need to, if you've got some music and you need to mute it, or a speaker, and you need to mute them, you know, then you can mute that right there. That's the mute button. This also mutes the person right here, the speaker icon. You can also mute it from here. It's kind of, you know, whichever one you're most comfortable using, but if you need to, you know, turn something off from scene to scene, you can do that. Now, one real kind of cool trick, property that I want to show you guys, if you right click on the sprocket right here, we can also do it over here, but if you right click on the sprocket, you'll see a couple of options. I've kind of basically talked about filters. You know, filters are where you can do stuff like if you have noise or whatever, you know, then you can go in and clean that up. But under advanced audio properties, this is kind of important if you want to hear what you're putting out. So I'm going to click advanced audio properties. And if you notice right here, it brings up in that scene all the sources that I've got. It shows you the volume, which again, don't have to worry about that. So if you're bringing in, you know, like a studio camera or something like that, that has one channel of audio, you want to click and tell it that it's mono. Kind of a handy little tip that I've learned from, you know, using OBS over the while. Mono is kind of handy. And right here where it says monitor off, by default, OBS Studio, if you have some headphones plugged up, you won't be able to hear what OBS is processing and passing through for a mix. So you need to come in and tell it monitor and output. This will actually send that to the speakers. So monitor and output, which again, I don't want to do that too loud right now because it'll cause feedback, but monitor and output is very important because you want to be able to hear that the audio that you're sending, you know, for example, in the NDI channel right here, isn't too loud and distorted, okay, or too quiet. So remember, for each one of these, right click. It's a good idea to do this because again, by default, OBS doesn't set it up this way. You want to do monitor and output. Oop, there we go. Now you can hear that sound. So we will turn this back down a little bit. So monitor and output is very, very important. So that's kind of, you know, the basics of this. The biggest thing for the audio mixer, as I said again, is make sure that from scene to scene, you have, for instance, the laptop mic, if that's going to be your main microphone, you have that from scene to scene to scene. A little bit of a hassle to remember, but once you kind of get in that habit of looking for it, especially when you're streaming, not that this has ever happened to me, but if you're streaming along and you switch a scene to go to a different camera or something and all of a sudden your audio drops out, I forgot to add the microphone, you know, so again, these little things you learn over time. So we're going to go next to the controls tab and then also talk some more about some advanced stuff in the studios tab.